My name's Michael Turner, and I'm 56 years old. I've seen more sunrises than I ever thought I'd earn, and more disappointments than any man should ever have to admit. But if you had told me 10 years ago that a single TV interview would flip my entire world on its head, I would have laughed right in your face, because back then I wasn't anyone special. I wasn't some big shot with a company name behind me or a line of people waiting to shake my hand. I was the guy who changed light bulbs in other people's offices, the kind of man who got coffee stains on his work shirts and paychecks that barely covered rent. That night, though, something was different. I remember walking into the studio, the smell of cold electronics and hairspray, the quiet hum of cameras warming up, the buzz of people who lived off deadlines and headlines. I sat down under those bright, merciless lights, and for a second I felt that old, nervous sweat creeping down my back. The host smiled at me, a practiced, camera-ready smile, and I smiled back, but deep down my mind wasn't there. My thoughts were in another time, another house, with another person, because somewhere out there, sitting on a couch she'd probably bought with the money she said I'd never make, was Laura, my ex-wife. The same woman who used to tell me I was chasing fairy tales. The same woman who looked me in the eyes and said, "Michael, you'll never be successful. You don't have it in you." And now, there I was, with a microphone clipped to my shirt, a camera pointed at my face, and my story about to be broadcasted into thousands of homes. I didn't even have to open my mouth yet to make my point. The fact that I was there, that I'd made it to that moment, was the loudest response I could have ever given her. You ever have someone look at you like you're a failure before you've even had the chance to try? Someone who doesn't just doubt you, but enjoys it. It's a quiet kind of cruelty, the sort that eats away at your confidence day after day. You start questioning yourself. Maybe they're right, you think. Maybe I really don't have what it takes. That's how it was with Laura. Every dream I dared to share with her, every little spark of hope, she poured water on it. And when I tried to light it again, she'd smirk and say something like, "You're just not built for that kind of success, Mike." For 22 years, I let those words define me. I worked like a mule trying to prove her wrong, but deep down, I was carrying her doubt inside me, too. I didn't realize that back then. I thought I was chasing success. I didn't know I was really running from her voice, that constant reminder that I'd never be enough. But that night in the studio, with the cameras rolling and my reflection staring back at me in the black glass of the teleprompter, something clicked. It wasn't just another interview. It was a full circle moment. The kind of moment that makes you look back and think, every ounce of pain had a purpose. I remember looking into the camera lens, pretending I was talking to the anchor, but in my heart, I was talking to her, to Laura, to the version of me she left behind, to the man who used to sit in the dark, surrounded by unpaid bills and broken pride. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to throw blame. I just needed to exist in that moment, calm, successful, and finally at peace. And the best part, the silence between words, because that silence spoke louder than any argument we ever had. It said everything I'd been too broken to say before. You were wrong about me. It's strange how life works. The same hands that once trembled from fear now held steady on live television. The same heart that once cracked from disappointment now beat with quiet confidence. I realized, right then, that I wasn't angry anymore. The revenge I thought I wanted, it wasn't about payback. It was about proving to myself that I could rise, even after being told I never would. That night changed everything. Not because the world saw me on TV, but because she did. The woman who mocked every dream I dared to have was sitting at home, watching me live on national television, while the man she left behind finally became the man he was meant to be. And I swear, that realization, that image of her watching me, it didn't feel bitter. It didn't feel triumphant. It just felt right. Like life had evened the score in a way no argument or apology ever could. I didn't have to say a word to prove her wrong. The lights, the camera, the moment they did it for me. The silence between my breaths carried more power than any speech I could have rehearsed. You ever wonder what it feels like to be written off by the person you love most? To hear them laugh at your dreams like they're jokes meant to be buried instead of built. To spend years trying to convince them, and maybe yourself, that you're capable of more. Well, I lived that. I lived it until it burned away every piece of doubt I ever had. And this is my story. The story of how I went from being the man my wife laughed at to becoming the man she wished she'd believed in. The story of how sometimes the quietest revenge is success and the sweetest justice is peace. That night didn't just change my life. It reminded me that the people who stop believing in you can only win if you stop believing in yourself, and I was finally done letting her win. I grew up in Kansas City, in one of those quiet, working-class neighborhoods where everybody knew each other's business. And success meant you paid your bills on time and maybe took your family to the lake in the summer. My dad was a mechanic, hands always stained with grease, smell of motor oil following him home like a second skin. My mom worked as a school secretary. She was the kind of woman who packed lunches with handwritten notes tucked inside and believed the world rewarded good manners and honest effort. We didn't have much, but what we had, we earned. Every dollar, every meal, every piece of furniture in that small living room came from hard work. And that work ethic, that stubborn belief that sweat could turn into something better, that's what built me, from as far back as I can remember. I wanted to do something that mattered. I wasn't looking to be rich or famous. I just didn't want to spend my life punching a clock for someone who didn't even know my name. I used to sit on the hood of my dad's old truck at sunset, staring at the horizon, thinking, there's got to be more than this. Maybe that's why I fell so hard for Laura. I met Laura when I was 24. She worked for a real estate agency downtown, all crisp blazers, high heels, and confidence that could fill a room. The first time I saw her, she was negotiating a deal over the phone, walking circles around her desk like she owned the world. She hung up, flashed me a smile that could stop traffic, and said, "You gonna stand there staring or introduce yourself?" I swear, my heart forgot how to beat for a second. Laura had this energy, sharp, fast, unstoppable. She was the kind of woman who made you believe you were lucky just to be near her. She spoke about success the way most people talk about air, like it was something she couldn't live without. She wasn't just ambitious. She was hungry, and me. I was a dreamer. I mistook her hunger for passion and thought, together, we could build something incredible. 2 years later, we were married. A small ceremony, simple, nothing fancy. But I remember thinking that day, standing there in a rented suit, that I'd won the lottery. I wasn't marrying just a woman. I was marrying a future. I believed in the story we told ourselves. 2 kids from the Midwest, building their own version of the American dream. I thought we'd build an empire together instead. I built dreams while she built walls. From day one, Laura had a plan. She wanted the nice house, the right neighborhood, the kind of life that looked like success, even if it wasn't happiness. I went along with it at first. Who doesn't want those things? But deep down, my version of success looked different. I didn't care about fancy furniture or dinner reservations. I cared about freedom. The freedom to create something that was mine. See, I've always been a builder, not of houses or cars, but ideas. Ever since I was a kid taking apart radios just to see how they worked. I've believed that one good idea could change a man's life. So when I came up with my concept, a home repair subscription service, something that would let homeowners pay a small monthly fee to get reliable help anytime they needed it, I felt that spark. It wasn't just an idea. It was my chance to build something lasting. I poured everything into it. I'd come home from my day job, grab dinner straight from the fridge, and work on my laptop until 2 in the morning. I sketched logos, built rough website drafts, and cold emailed contractors who never replied. I wasn't getting paid, not yet, but I felt alive. Laura didn't. At first she was patient, maybe even curious. She'd peek into my little home office, lean against the doorframe, and ask how it was going. I'd start explaining, excited, full of energy, but I'd always see that look in her eyes. The one that said, "You're wasting time." She didn't like the long nights, the unpaid months, or the someday promises. Laura liked things she could touch. Credit card statements with big limits. Shoes with red soles. Weekend brunches with friends who wore diamond bracelets. She liked results. And me. I was all hope and no finish line. That was my mistake. I thought love meant patience. I thought marriage meant someone walking beside you through the fog until you reached the light. But Laura wasn't built for fog. She wanted the shortcut, the guarantee, the prize before the process. The cracks started small. A sarcastic comment here, a sigh there. Then, before I knew it, we were at war. She'd stand in the kitchen with her arms crossed while I tried to explain another setback. "You're wasting your life, Mike," she'd snap. "You think people are gonna pay monthly to fix a leaky faucet? You're not Steve Jobs. You're a handyman with a laptop." Every time she said it, something inside me tightened. Not anger, not yet, but shame. That quiet, choking kind of shame that makes you question your worth. I'd try to argue, to defend the dream, but her words always hit their mark. "You're just chasing a fantasy," she'd say. "You need to be realistic. You need to get a real job, Mike." She wasn't just doubting me. She was dismantling me, piece by piece, word by word. I'd wake up in the morning already exhausted, not from the work, but from the weight of her disbelief. And the worst part, a small part of me started believing her. Then came the breaking point, the day my first investor pulled out. I remember standing in the garage, staring at the email on my phone. It was polite, clinical. "After further consideration, we've decided to move in another direction." I felt the floor drop out from under me. When I told Laura, she didn't comfort me. She didn't even sigh. She laughed, not a nervous laugh. Not one of those awkward, "I don't know what to say" chuckles. No. She laughed like it was funny that I even tried. That sound, that cruel, careless laugh, it stuck with me. It carved itself into my chest. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. Laura didn't just doubt me. She was rooting against me. And that was the day the American dream, our dream, started to fall apart. not with a fight, not with a goodbye, but with a laugh that said, "You'll never make it, and I can't wait to be right." I didn't know it then, but that laugh would become the fuel that carried me through every sleepless night that followed. The sound that haunted me long enough to make me stronger. The sound that turned failure into fire. 2 years. That's how long I held on to hope with both hands before it finally slipped through my fingers. 2 years of late nights, early mornings, and coffee that tasted like determination and regret. 2 years of trying to breathe life into a dream that everyone, including my own wife, had already buried by then. The numbers didn't lie anymore. My business wasn't just struggling. It was drowning. My savings had bled out to zero. The house that once felt like a symbol of making it now felt like a trap with walls that echoed back my failures. The kids, God bless them, were too young to understand why the lights sometimes flickered or why Mum and Dad didn't talk at the dinner table anymore. The fridge was a metaphor for my life half empty, humming weakly, filled with leftovers of things that used to feel full. Meanwhile, Laura had found a way to keep her world shiny. She'd joined a new real estate group downtown, her crew, as she liked to call them. They were the kind of people who laughed loudly, drank expensive wine, and took group selfies like they were auditioning for a magazine cover. I'd see her posts on social media, rooftop parties, steak dinners, champagne glasses reflecting city lights. Captions like "work hard, play harder," or "success is a mindset." And there I was, sitting in our garage, laptop balanced on my knees, surrounded by broken tools and unpaid bills, trying to fix bugs in a website that no one visited. Every time I refreshed the analytics and saw 0 visitors, I felt smaller, like the world was watching me dig my own grave, one line of code at a time. One night, she came home late. The sound of her heels clicking down the hallway felt foreign. She smelled like a mix of expensive perfume and someone else's approval. She didn't say where she'd been, and I didn't ask. I didn't need to. I could read it in her posture, in that detached calmness she wore like a new dress. It wasn't about another man. It was about something where she'd fallen in love with a different version of herself. A version that didn't include me. She stopped calling me babe. That quiet little nickname that used to make bad days feel lighter disappeared first. Then she started calling me Mike, like I was some distant co-worker she barely tolerated. Eventually, it turned into Michael, said flat and sharp, the way a teacher says a student's full name when they've disappointed her. And then came the silence, the kind that fills a room and makes you wish someone would just scream, so you could feel something again. I remember one night like it's burned into my bones. The kids were asleep, their toys scattered across the living room floor like forgotten pieces of innocence. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same spot where we'd once laughed over cheap pizza and dreams. Only now, that table was buried under unpaid bills, final notices, and a calculator that told me what I already knew: I was out of options. Laura walked in, wearing that same distant look, crossed her arms, and stared at me like I was a stranger. "You know what your problem is," she said. Her tone wasn't angry. It was worse, it was indifferent. "You think people care about effort. They don't. They care about results. And you, Michael, are all effort. No results." Those words didn't just sting. They cut. They crawled inside me and built a nest. Because deep down, I feared she was right. What did I have to show for my effort? Not the business I promised her. Not the stability I promised my family. just piles of rejection emails and an inbox full of maybe next time. I looked at her, trying to find a trace of the woman who used to believe in me, but she wasn't there. There was only this new Laura, polished, impatient, and done. A week later, I came home from picking up the kids to find her packing her bags. The closet doors were open, half the hangers empty, her perfume still hanging in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She zipped up her suitcase, grabbed her car keys, and walked out of our life like it was just another bad investment she was cutting her losses on. No hug. No goodbye. Not even a glance back. She left me with the house a shell of our dreams. The kids, part-time, and a note. Just a single sheet of paper left on the counter, folded neatly. I unfolded it with shaking hands. You'll thank me one day. You're not built for success. That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just that sentence. I stood there for a long time, staring at the note. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me human. I wanted to scream, to chase her, to demand she take it back. But instead, I just sat down on the kitchen floor, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd tried to build. I didn't thank her. I broke that night. I cried, not the loud kind, not the movie kind. The quiet kind that no one sees. The kind that steals your breath and makes your body shake while your mind goes blank. The kind that doesn't release pain but traps it deeper inside. I felt like a joke, not just to her, but to the world. To everyone who ever said be practical. To every friend who'd given me that polite smile when I told them about my business idea. The joke wasn't funny anymore, was my life. For the next few weeks, I moved through the days like a ghost. I did what I had to for the kids, fixed what I could in the house, and sat in that same garage at night, staring at the dying light of the computer screen, wondering where I went wrong. The truth was, my business didn't fail because the idea was bad. It failed because I was broken. And you can't build anything real with a broken spirit. But even in that emptiness, somewhere in the back of my mind, her words wouldn't stop echoing. You're not built for success. And maybe it was the anger. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was something deeper. But a voice inside me whispered back, we'll see about that. There's a kind of silence that only comes when everything you were building has collapsed. It's not peaceful, it's hollow. It's the silence after a storm when you realize the wreckage is yours to clean up, and no one's coming to help. That's what rock bottom felt like to me. The phone stopped ringing, the world stopped caring, and for the first time in my adult life, there was no one left to impress or disappoint. It was just me, a stack of unpaid bills, and a mirror that showed a man I barely recognized. At first, I hated that silence. I'd fill it with noise-old movies, the hum of the refrigerator, the tapping of my fingers on the kitchen table, anything to avoid hearing my own thoughts. But eventually, when the noise ran out, I was forced to listen, and in that quiet, I realized something brutal yet freeing. There was nothing left to lose. That realization was the spark. Small, almost invisible, but real. I could either rot in the ruins of what Laura said I wasn't, or start proving her wrong. So I got up. Not dramatically, not with some triumphant speech, just quietly. The kind of getting up that hurts more than falling. I dusted off my old toolkit, dug out the number list of past clients, and started working again as a repairman. Nothing fancy, leaky faucets, broken doors, faulty wiring. Jobs that didn't need dreams, just hands that knew what they were doing. The money wasn't great, but it was honest, and in a strange way, that honesty started healing me. Every time I fixed something for someone, a heater that worked again, a sink that stopped flooding, felt a small, flickering pride, like I was rebuilding not just homes, but myself. But as I went from house to house, something kept catching my attention. Every customer complained about the same thing. It's impossible to find someone reliable these days. We called 5 people before you picked up. Wish there was just one number to call for all this stuff. And that's when it hit me. My old idea, the one Laura laughed at, wasn't bad. It was just early. The world wasn't ready for it then. Maybe it was now. That thought hit me like a jolt of electricity. I remember sitting in my truck that night, staring at my greasy hands and laughing, not because it was funny, but because it finally made sense. Maybe all the pain, all the humiliation had been leading me here. To start again, not from anger, but from understanding. So I rebuilt. Not the same way as before. This time, I was careful, smarter, slower. I didn't chase big investors or flashy websites. I worked with what I had: an old laptop, a few $100, and a belief that maybe, just maybe, I could make something real this time. I called it Home Hero. Simple, human, something people could trust. A monthly subscription for homeowners to get vetted. Reliable, local, handyman fast, affordable, and easy. The same idea that once made my wife roll her eyes was now my lifeline. My days were long, my nights even longer. I'd fix sinks and heaters by daylight, then sit in my garage after midnight writing code until my eyes blurred. My meals were microwaved, my coffee black, and my dreams fragile but alive. I'd tape little notes to my computer, keep going. They laughed once. Months turned into years, to past, then 3. Progress was slow, painfully slow. But for the first time, I didn't mind, because every small win mattered. Every new sign-up, every customer testimonial, every thank you email felt like fuel. And even when it was hard, I reminded myself, the silence that once broke me was now the place where I was rebuilding my voice. Then one Tuesday morning, just another ordinary day, the universe decided to whisper back. I was halfway through fixing a garbage disposal when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, thinking it was spam, but something made me look. Subject: congratulations. Body: your startup, Home Hero, has been selected for the Midwest Small Business Showcase. At first, I thought it was a scam. I read it 3 times before it sunk in. They wanted to feature me, my company, on local television. It was a business expo, sponsored by one of the biggest news stations in the area. I stood there, wrench in hand, staring at my phone in disbelief. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't sent out a pitch. Someone, somewhere, had just noticed what I was doing and decided it mattered. For years, I'd been invisible. Now, suddenly, someone was inviting me to stand in front of cameras and talk about my dream. I remember sitting in my truck after that, my hands trembling. I looked up at the cloudy morning sky and laughed quietly, not out of joy, but out of sheer disbelief that maybe, just maybe, things were finally turning. The night I hit rock bottom, I thought the silence would kill me, but in that same silence, a spark had been waiting, small, steady, patient, and that spark, against all odds, had just lit the way forward. The studio was colder than I imagined. Not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning. but the kind that seeps into your bones because you realize you're standing in a place you never believed you'd be. Bright lights glared from every corner, bouncing off metal frames and polished floors. Cameras stood like sentinels in front of me, their red dots glowing, waiting for my words. Cables coiled underfoot like snakes, and people with headsets moved briskly, speaking in half sentences about angles and timing. It all felt surreal. A young producer with nervous energy hurried over and clipped a small microphone to my collar. "You'll do great," she said, giving me a quick, professional smile. I nodded, trying to look calm, even though my palms were slick with sweat. My heart wasn't racing, it was pounding, like it was trying to make up for all the years it had stayed quiet. The anchor walked in, Jake Matthews, the guy I'd watched on local TV for years, sitting on that same couch, interviewing people who seemed worlds apart from me. Up close, he was taller than I expected, confident but easy. He shook my hand like we'd known each other forever. "So, Michael," he said, settling into his seat and adjusting his tie, "I hear your company's changing how people think about home maintenance." That line, just hearing it, nearly undid me. I wanted to laugh, maybe even cry, because 10 years ago, the only thing people associated me with was failure, and now someone was saying my company was changing something. I smiled, tried to play it cool, but inside I was shaking so hard I could feel the mic tremble against my chest. I started talking slowly at first. I told them about Home Hero, about the subscription service that connected homeowners with trusted local repairmen. I explained how it worked, how it made people's lives easier, how it helped workers like me find steady jobs again. But as I spoke, something shifted inside me. Jake didn't interrupt. He just listened, really listened, and nodded like my story mattered. And for the first time in years, I stopped feeling like a man trying to justify his existence. I started feeling like a man who'd earned the right to speak. When he leaned forward, his tone softened. "That's inspiring, man," he said. "You really built this from nothing." I smiled back at him, a little tighter this time. "From less than nothing." He laughed, and so did the crew. But I didn't mean it as a joke. Because when you've lost everything, your money, your confidence, your marriage, don't start from nothing. You start from a hole, one you dug yourself. And you have to climb out inch by inch while the world watches and doubts. We wrapped up the interview, and Jake shook my hand again, telling me it was one of his favorite segments. I thanked him, walked off the set, and as soon as I was outside, I just stood there under the afternoon sun, blinking. The world looked the same, but I felt different. Lighter somehow, like I'd just closed a door I'd been staring at for too long. I didn't expect anything to come from it. Maybe a few local folks would see it, maybe a handful of new customers. That's all. I drove home that night with the radio off, just letting the silence fill the car. I thought about my dad, the mechanic who taught me to keep my hands dirty but my word clean. I thought about the nights in the garage when I'd code until dawn. I thought about Laura, her voice echoing in my head, sharp and cold. "You're not built for success." I smiled at the memory, not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of peace. Because maybe she'd been right about me back then. Maybe I hadn't been built for success, but I'd rebuilt myself since then, piece by piece. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. Emails, texts, notifications. The interview had gone live overnight. Something unexpected happened. It took off at first. It was just local traction neighbors, small business owners, even an old teacher of mine commenting on social media, saying how proud they were. But by noon, it had spread further. Someone had shared it on a business blog, then another. The story of the handyman who built an empire from his garage was suddenly everywhere within a week. Home Hero's website traffic tripled. Hundreds of new subscribers signed up. My inbox flooded with investor inquiries. People who once wouldn't even answer my calls were now calling me sir. Newspapers wanted follow-up stories. Podcasts sent invites. It was like watching a seed I'd buried years ago finally break through the soil. But none of that compared to the message that came next. It was late. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd once sat surrounded by bills, feeling like a failure. My phone buzzed, and when I saw the name on the screen, my chest tightened. Laura. For a long moment, I just stared at the name. I could almost hear her voice in my head, that mix of disbelief and pride she used to have before everything fell apart. I thought about ignoring it, about letting the silence be my reply. But curiosity, human, stubborn curiosity, got the better of me. I opened the message, saw your interview. Didn't expect that. Congratulations, Mike. Guess I was wrong. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just 7 words that landed like a punch and a hug all at once. I read them twice. Then I laughed quietly, not out of spite, but relief. Because I didn't need her to admit she was wrong-eyed. Already forgiven her long before she realized it. That night, I walked outside and looked up at the stars. The air was cold again, just like in that studio. But this time, the chill didn't bother me. Because for the first time in my life, the world wasn't laughing at me. It was listening. Her number appeared on my phone one night, like a ghost that had finally remembered my name. For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The screen glowed in the dark room, that familiar 10-digit number pulsing quietly. The one I'd deleted a dozen times but somehow never forgot. I stared at it, motionless, as if picking up that call might unravel everything I'd built since she left. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. My thumb hovered above the screen. Every memory, every argument, every cruel word we'd thrown at each other came flooding back like old static on a radio station you thought was gone. And then I answered, Michael. Her voice hit me like a chill wind through an open door. It was softer than I remembered, like she'd sanded the edges off it. But I knew that tonic was the same voice that used to cut me down, and somehow the same one that once whispered, I love you. Yeah, I said, trying to sound neutral. I saw you on TV. There it was. Not a hello, not a how are you, just that. I could almost picture her sitting there on her couch, probably in that immaculate apartment she left me for, holding her phone in one hand. A glass of wine in the other, eyes glued to the screen as my face appeared between commercials. She hesitated, then said softly, you looked good. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Compliments from Laura used to feel like medals, rare, polished, and always conditional. But now, it felt strange, like she was talking to someone she didn't quite recognize anymore. Thanks, I said finally. There was a pause. Then she said, with this light, practiced tone, I always knew you'd figure it out, and that was the line that broke something loose inside me. Not in anger, no, that would have been too easy. It was something deeper, a quiet, weary kind of amusement. Because I remembered every word she'd ever said when I was failing. Every sarcastic laugh, every you're wasting your time, Every night she rolled her eyes at my dreams. And now here she was, rewriting history with a single sentence. As if those years of bitterness never happened. I smiled, not the kind of smile that shows teeth, but the tired one that comes when you realize you've finally won a war you stopped fighting long ago. No, Laura, I said gently. You didn't, but that's okay. Silence filled the line. Heavy, weighted silence. The kind that doesn't need words because it carries 20 years of regret and all the things neither of us ever said when we had the chance. I could almost hear her breathing, could almost feel her searching for something to hold on to in that momentum bridge that might still exist between us. But there wasn't one. After what felt like a lifetime, she cleared her throat. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, just to catch up. There was something almost fragile in her voice. Not arrogance, not manipulation, just loneliness. And maybe, for the first time, a trace of remorse. I looked around my living room at the stacks of home hero files on the table, the laptop still glowing with new messages from investors, the framed newspaper article from the week before. My world was full now, busy, alive, mine. I didn't want revenge, not anymore. I just wanted peace. I don't know, Laura, I said slowly. I'm finally busy doing what you said I couldn't. There was a long pause. I could hear her swallow, could almost feel the weight of her realizing that those words, once her weapon, were now my truth. I'll call you when I have time, I added, my tone calm, final. And then, without waiting for her reply, I hung up. I sat there for a long moment afterward, staring at my phone in the dim light. The call had lasted only 4 minutes, but it felt like it closed an entire chapter of my life. Outside, the night was still. No thunder, no rain, no cinematic drama. Just the hum of the city beyond my window and the faint reflection of my face in the glass. Man who'd finally learned how to let go. For years, I'd thought that proving her wrong would mean standing on a stage or signing a big deal or saying something clever that would make her regret everything. But now, I realized the real victory wasn't about proving anything to her at all. It was about answering the call, not to gloat, not to punish, but to finally, quietly move on. And as I set the phone down, I felt it for the first time in decades. Freedom. I used to think revenge was about proving someone wrong so loudly that the whole world could hear it. I used to imagine the day I'd throw my success in Laura's face, make her see everything she walked away from. But when it finally came, it didn't feel like that at all. It wasn't fire. It was quiet. I didn't need to shout. Didn't need to post some perfect photos online. Didn't need to brag to anyone. Because somewhere along the road from broken to rebuilt, I realized that real revenge isn't about making someone else hurt. It's about making yourself whole again. It's about walking through the ashes of what they left behind and building something that shines without needing their approval. And that's exactly what I did. The small local interview that aired on Channel 7 became a ripple that wouldn't stop spreading. A week later, it was picked up by a regional affiliate. A few weeks after that, it made its way into national business blogs, startup newsletters, even radio talk shows that usually never bothered with stories like mine. It was strange watching my name, Michael Turner, start to mean something outside my own head. For so long, that name had been tied to disappointment, to failure, to almost made it. But now, it was attached to something different. Something solid, Home Hero started growing faster than I could have imagined. Investors who once ghosted my emails were suddenly calling me, offering meetings, partnerships, funding. A venture group from Chicago backed us for expansion, and within 6 months, we were operating in 3 states. 3 states. I remember sitting at my desk one night, surrounded by papers and contracts, just staring at the logo on the wall. The same name I'd scribbled on napkins in the garage was now printed on the shirts of 50 employees, plastered on trucks, spoken by people who believed in it, believed in me. And in those moments, when the noise of success filled the room, I thought back to that quiet little kitchen table, the one where Laura once stood with her arms crossed, telling me I wasn't built for success. I could still hear her voice, sharp and certain, cutting through the years like a blade. But now, it didn't sting. It sounded like an old recording played too many times, losing its clarity, fading into static, because I'd built something stronger than her words. And then, one morning, something surreal happened. I woke up to an email from Forbes' Small Business Spotlight. At first, I thought it was another scam. I almost deleted it. But when I saw the official signature, the editor's name, and the words, "We'd love to feature your story in next month's edition," I felt my heart stop. I read it over and over, trying to process it. Forbes, the same magazine I used to read at gas stations while pumping cheap coffee into a paper cup, wondering if people like me ever made it in those pages. The next month, the article went live. The headline hit me harder than I expected. From garage to glory, the man who turned doubt into a business empire. There it was, my story, told to the world. The failure, the rebuilding, the comeback. Not as a sob story, but as a triumph. They'd even used an old photo of me in my garage, beside one of the new office. Same man, same smile, but 2 completely different worlds. When I got my hands on a printed copy, I didn't rush to post it online. I didn't text anyone or tag the article. I just sat there in my office with that glossy page between my fingers, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Later that evening, I bought a wooden frame from a small shop down the street. Nothing fancy, just something simple and strong. I slid the article into it, smoothed out the edges, and hung it on the wall. Right next to it, I placed a photo, faded and worn, of the old house Laura left me in, the one with the peeling paint and the empty driveway. I didn't hang it there to spite her. I hung it there as a reminder of where I came from, because every time I walked past that wall, I wanted to remember something. I wanted to remember the nights I thought I'd lost everything, the mornings I had to convince myself to keep going, the sting of her laughter when I told her my dreams. And I wanted to remember that sometimes the people who doubt you the loudest are the ones too, afraid to chase their own dreams. That wall became my quiet revenge, not a billboard, not a shout, not a speech, just 2 frames. One showing what she walked away from, the other showing what I became. And every time I saw them side by side, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt gratitude, because without the fire she lit under my failure, I might never have found the strength to rebuild myself from the ground up. In the end, I realized something no victory speech could teach me. Success doesn't need applause. It doesn't need revenge. It just needs time, because eventually the world catches up, and the people who once turned their backs on you, they have no choice but to face the truth. Thee became everything they said you couldn't be, and that's the sweetest sound in the world. It was strange how full circle life could feel when you least expected it. Months after the Forbes article, I thought the wave had settled. The business was steady, the team was growing, and the chaos of being the new success story was finally calming down. I'd stopped worrying about recognition and started focusing on the work, again on the people who trusted me. The homes we were helping, the steady rhythm of progress that didn't need applause anymore. And then one afternoon, I got the email, the same local news channel that first told my story, the same one where I had stumbled nervously through my first on-camera interview, wanted me back. But this time, it wasn't a 5-minute segment at noon. This time, it was prime time. The headline read, "Local Visionary Returns. Where is he now?" I sat there at my desk for a long time, staring at the invitation. There was something poetic about it. The same studio that once felt like a cold spotlight on my insecurities was now asking me to come back as a symbol of success. A story people wanted to hear again. When I walked into that studio the second time, it didn't feel cold anymore. The lights were still bright. The cables still tangled across the floor. The cameras still blinking red, but this time, I wasn't shaking. This time, I walked in wearing confidence, not fear. The crew greeted me like an old friend. Jake, the anchor, grinned as soon as he saw me. "Michael Turner." "Backed by popular demand," he said, shaking my hand. It was the same set, the same chair, even the same coffee mug on the desk. But everything else had changed, especially me. We talked about the business first, naturally. The expansion into 3 new states, the new employees, the scholarship fund we'd started for trade school students. The audience loved it. Every mention of growth got a little nod or smile from Jake. But then, near the end, he leaned forward, his tone shifting slightly. "Michael," he said, "you've inspired a lot of people, but I've got to ask, what kept you going all those years when no one believed in you?" The room got quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every heartbeat sound like a drum. I looked at Jake for a moment, then at the camera, the same lens that had once made me feel small, exposed, and nervous. But this time, I wasn't speaking to a lens. I was speaking to the kid I used to be, the man who worked in a cold garage, who stared at unpaid bills, who watched the woman he loved walk away because he couldn't make her believe in his dream. I took a breath. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "you don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe enough for both of you." Jake smiled. The crew behind the cameras nodded, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking straight ahead through that lens, through the years, through the memory of every person who had doubted me. That moment, it was like time folded. All the pain, all the silence, all the quiet determination I had carried like armor, it all poured out in one simple truth. And then the interview ended. I didn't think much of it at first. I went home, poured myself a drink, and sat in my quiet living room, the one filled with echoes of late nights and small victories. The next morning, though, everything changed. That clip, the few seconds of me looking into the camera and saying those words, exploded online. Someone had posted it with the caption, "Believe in yourself, even when no one else does." It was everywhere. It hit Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, even LinkedIn of all places. People were cutting it into montages, overlaying it with music, quoting it on motivational pages. I saw it pop up in a compilation titled "Real Men Who Never Gave Up." Every time I opened my phone, there it was. My face, my voice, my words. It didn't feel like felt like closure. like the universe had finally let me stand up straight after years of being hunched under the weight of doubt. A few nights later, I was scrolling through the flood of comments, people sharing their own stories, thanking me for the reminder that belief starts from within. When I saw a name that made my thumb freeze mid-scroll, Laura. For a second, I thought it had to be a coincidence. But then I looked again. It was her profile. The same name, the same faint smile in the profile photo, and beneath the video, beneath the thousands of likes and comments from strangers, was her message. Proud of you, Mike. That one line hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I felt that old ache again. The one that used to live in my chest after she left the hollow, heavy space that used to whisper, if only. It was like an echo of a life I no longer belonged to. I read the comment twice, maybe 3 times. Not out of anger, but out of a quiet kind of wonder. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear those words from her. Back then, her approval was the finish line I was running toward every late night. Every rejection, every moment of exhaustion fueled by the fantasy that one day she'd see I was worth believing in. But sitting there that night, with the glow of my phone on my face and a world that finally believed in me, I realized something. I didn't need her pride anymore. I didn't need her words, her validation, or her apology. Because I wasn't the man she left. I wasn't the dreamer she dismissed. I wasn't the version of me that needed someone else to see my worth before I did. That man was gone. The man sitting there now was living proof that stubborn faith in yourself could move mountains that love never could. So I smiled, not the bitter kind, not the triumphant kind, just a small, calm smile that came from peace. Then I locked my phone, set it on the table, and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the window. The same city that once made me feel invisible now reflected back every ounce of the life I'd built, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was proving anything to anyone. I was just living it. Because real revenge isn't about reminding them of what they lost. It's about reminding yourself of what you became. These days, my life is quiet, not empty, not lonely, just quiet in a way that feels earned. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. The kind that feels like a deep breath after a long storm. The mornings start simple now. I wake up before sunrise, make a cup of coffee, and sit by the window watching the world come alive. No deadlines breathing down my neck, no anxiety crawling in my chest about whether things will work out. The business practically runs itself these days. Good people, loyal clients, systems that I once thought were impossible to build. I still oversee things, of course, but mostly from a distance. I've learned that success isn't about control, it's about trust in others and in yourself. My kids are grown now, both of them carving their own paths, stronger and wiser than I ever was at their age. My daughter calls me every Sunday, even when she doesn't need anything. My son still cracks the same jokes I used to make when he was 10. They both tell me they're proud of me, and every time, I think about how those words mean more than any headline, any interview, any spotlight ever could. Sometimes, when I have time to spare, I take the long way home, the route that winds through the old neighborhoods I used to work in, the ones where my story began, the streets where I once fixed gutters, patched roofs, and knocked on doors, hoping someone would give me a chance. I don't do it to reminisce, I do it to remind myself that nothing great ever grows without struggle. And then, There's that house, the one Laura and I used to share. It's still there. Standing tall, the same brick walls, the same porch light that flickered on and off when the wiring acted up. Every time I pass by, I see the warm glow of lamps through the window, curtains drawn halfway, shadows moving inside. She still lives there, alone. Funny how life works, isn't it? She left to chase something brighter, something faster, something she thought was more real. But what she never realized is that the shine she was chasing was never outside. It was something you had to build from within. She once told me that I'd never be successful, that I was too slow, too hopeful, too naive to make it in a world built on results. But she was wrong, not because I proved her wrong, but because I learned that success doesn't look like what she thought it did. Success isn't a mansion, or a luxury car, or being the loudest person in the room. It's being able to stand in your own skin without needing anyone's permission to be proud of it. Every once in a while, she still texts me. Nothing dramatic, just small talk. A photo of the kids when they were little. I remember this. Message when an old memory pops up on her Facebook feed. Sometimes even a half-hearted apology wrapped inside a joke. I always reply, polite, respectful, kind. But that's all. I don't dig into old wounds. I don't ask about her life. I don't wonder if she regrets leaving. Because I've learned something important. When you truly make peace with the past, you don't need to revisit it. You don't crave closure, or explanation, or revenge. You just let it be what it was. There was a time when I thought peace meant winning, that I'd only feel whole when the world saw what she couldn't. But I was wrong. Real peace isn't loud. It doesn't post about itself. It doesn't need validation or applause. It's quiet. It's sitting alone in your kitchen at midnight, smiling for no reason. It's watching your kids grow into good people. It's having dinner with old friends who remember the man you were before everything fell apart and still love you for who you've become after. Sometimes I'll see her around town at the grocery store or the coffee shop near Main Street. She always smiles, that polite, uncertain smile people wear when they're not sure how much of the past still lingers. I smile back. That's all. No bitterness, no nostalgia. Just a calm, silent understanding that we both ended up where we were meant to. She looks older now, softer somehow. There's a stillness in her that wasn't there before, the kind that comes when the noise finally dies down and the world gets quiet enough for you to hear yourself think, and me. I feel lighter than I've ever felt, because forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It means deciding that it no longer gets to control you, that you've taken back your story, that you've stopped being the man defined by someone else's doubt. Sometimes, late at night, I'll think about that version of me, the man sitting in a cold garage, surrounded by broken code and unpaid bills, trying to keep a dream alive, while the person he loved most told him to give it up. I wish I could tell him that one day he'd look back and smile, not because he'd get revenge, but because he'd find peace, and that peace wouldn't come from proving her wrong. It would come from finally believing he was enough all along. So yes, I still pass that house sometimes. I still see those lights on. And every time I do, I whisper a small thank you, not for what she did, but for what it taught me. Because without the breaking, there'd be no rebuilding. Without the loss, no lesson. Without her walking away, I might have never walked toward the man I was meant to become. And that's the thing about peace. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It just is. It's the sound of silence after the storm, the warmth of forgiveness that no one else can see, the life you live quietly, proudly, freely when you finally stop chasing what hurts you and start living for what heals you. If you've ever been told you'll never make it, I want you to listen to me carefully, because I've been there. I've been in that place where every door slammed shut, where every maybe turned into a no, and the people you trusted most made you feel like your dreams were nothing more than foolish fantasies. I've lived the kind of nights where you stare at the ceiling, wondering if they're right about you, wondering if you really are just wasting time, chasing something that was never meant for you. But here's the truth. I learned the hard way. They're wrong, and not because you'll prove them wrong with success or fame or money. No. That's the surface stuff, the noise. They're wrong because they never had the right to define who you were in the first place. Their disbelief doesn't change your potential. Their doubt doesn't rewrite your story. The only thing that defines you is what you do when no one believes in you. For years, Laura's words lived in my head. I used to replay them like a broken record. You're not built for success. It was like she'd written it in stone somewhere, like those 6 words would haunt me forever. And for a while, they did. They ate at me, slowly. Every time I failed, I'd hear her voice again, cold, certain, final. But somewhere along the road, somewhere between the long nights, the quiet victories, and the moments where I almost gave up, her voice started to fade. It didn't happen all at once. It happened so quietly I almost didn't notice. One morning, I just realized I hadn't thought about her words in weeks. The echo had finally turned into silence. And that silence, that's when I understood what success really is. Success isn't a trophy. It's not the car in your driveway, or the zeros in your bank account, or the applause you get when the world finally notices you. Success is a mirror, and when you're ready to look into it, you see the truth of who you've become. You see the scars, the resilience, the mistakes, the growth, all the little things that made you into someone who doesn't need anyone's permission to stand tall. The man I see in the mirror today isn't perfect. He's not rich beyond reason or famous beyond recognition, but he's free. Free from doubt, free from bitterness, free from the weight of trying to prove something to someone who stopped caring long ago. So, if you're listening to this, sitting somewhere feeling small, feeling like no one believes in you, I want you to know something. You don't need them to. You don't need applause or validation, or a single "I'm proud of you" from the people who left when you were at your lowest. Because one day, when you've done the work, when you've walked through the fire, when you've kept going after everyone else stopped, you'll know. You'll know because peace feels different than revenge. It's quieter, softer, stronger. It's the moment you realize that all those people who doubted you were never the obstacle. They were just the noise you had to tune out to hear your own voice clearly. I used to think that the best revenge was making them watch me win. But the truth, the best revenge is not needing them to see it at all. These days, when I think about that interview, the one that changed everything, I don't think about Laura watching from home, or what she might have felt seeing me on TV. I think about me, sitting in that chair, nervous but proud, not because I was finally being seen by the world, but because I was finally seeing myself. For the first time, I believed in the man I'd become, and that's something no one can take away. So if you're out there, broke, doubted, abandoned, or underestimated, don't waste your time trying to prove anyone wrong. It's a trap. You'll spend years chasing a finish line that doesn't exist. Instead, chase purpose. Chase peace. Chase that version of yourself that refuses to quit, that keeps building even when everything around you is falling apart. And one day, when the light hits just right, when your story starts to unfold, when the people who doubted you catch a glimpse of your name somewhere, they'll pause. They'll remember what they said. They'll feel that sting of regret. But you won't feel anger. You won't even feel pride. You'll feel calm, because you'll know that you didn't need their belief to get here. You just needed yours. And when the world finally sees you, whether it's on a TV screen, a newspaper headline, or just in the quiet success of your own peace, you won't need to say a single word, because your silence will say it all. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that in the end, the people who walked away taught you how to stand alone. The ones who doubted you taught you how to believe harder. And the ones who left you in the dark made you appreciate your own light. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: don't chase applause. Don't chase revenge. Chase peace. Chase purpose. Because when you finally find them, you'll realize you were never proving them wrong. You were just proving yourself right.